Because we fall, the climb must be our destination. We are what we overcome.
Pantheon is one of my favorite champions in League of Legends. Today we're going to analyze the themes behind the character and the possible philosophies of the champion. I will start explaining Pantheon's story in the game lore and then identify some similarities with the ancient Greek myths, especially with Achilles. So let's start by the name, Pantheon. But before he became Pantheon, he was named Atreus. Atreus in ancient Greek means fearless. Together with his friend Pylus, Atreus climbed Mount Targon to capture the power of the Aspects. In League of Legends lore, the Aspects are divine entities. Climbing the mountain was too hard and Pylus collapsed before reaching the peak. Only Atreus remained as the skies opened, making him host of the divine aspect. But it was not a man who returned from the mountain, spear and shield gleaming with celestial might. It was the aspect of war itself, the Pantheon. This deity considered Atreus weak, a mere mortal, so it took control of his body, making it a tool to pursue its own ends. Until Pantheon had a fight with the Dark King Aatrox. Their fight raged into the skies until the impossible occurred. The Dark King's god-killing blade was driven into Pantheon's chest, a blow that carved the constellation of war from the heavens. But as the aspect faded, Atreus, the man it had considered weak, awoke once more. Impaled upon Aatrox's blade, and with the power of the aspect's weapon dimming, he took a raged breath and spit in the Dark King's face.
Even impaled on a blade, I will press forward.
Aatrox sneered and left Atreus to die.
The god died. The man lives.
Atreus had such a strong will to survive and to revenge that he survived. Time passed, Atreus kept the Aspect's weapons, even though now they were stripped from their divine power and gleaming. Atreus found the Dark King Aatrox once again. Recognizing the battered shield and spear of the falling Aspect, the Dark King mocked him. What hope had Atreus now without the Pantheon's power? But even though Aatrox's blows cast him to his knees, Atreus' own will reignited the Aspect's spear.
Aatrox has slaughtered gods, but now he faces a man.
And with a mighty leap, he struck a blow that severed the Dark King's sword arm. Both Blade and Dark King fell to the ground. Only Atreus still stood and watched his namesake star blaze back to life in the heavens.
Willpower sets my spear alight. I sought power on Targon's peak, only to find it within.
Pantheon in ancient Greek means related to all the gods. It's the name of an ancient temple in Rome. I'm not sure if that's a good name, since in the lore, Pantheon is against all gods. A better name would be Pentheus, which means man of sorrows. But Pantheon has nothing to do with Pentheus, the Greek hero who had a fight with Dionysius and ended up being torn apart by women. Of all the Greek heroes, the one most similar to Pantheon is Achilles. Pantheon's weapons are divine and they gleam, just like Achilles. If you know a bit of the story of Iliad, you must remember that for a period, Achilles was refusing to fight. The Trojans were gaining territory, dangerously approaching the Achaeans' base on the beach. So Achilles allowed Patroclus, his beloved friend, to use his armor and soldiers, the Myrmidons, to fight the Trojans, but only to defend the beach. Patroclus goes to battle and does a good job, but ends up getting killed by Hector, the Prince of Troy. Hector takes Achilles' armors with him. Remember that Patroclus was wearing them. Hector wears the armor, which is a dishonor to Achilles, but Achilles doesn't care. He can only think of revenge. Achilles' mother asks Hephaestus to forge a new armor and a shield. That shield is very important. It was carved with many symbols, representing the eternity of time, war, and human existence, and it was a very strong shield. Achilles' armor shines on the battlefield, very similar to Pantheon in the game. Achilles isn't a god, he's a human, a mortal, so he needs to wear armor.
I wear a helm so that I am only a soldier.
Possessed with anger, Achilles fought an entire army of Trojans. Achilles alone, without any divine assistance, was so mighty that he would make the Achaeans win the battle much before when Troy was meant to fall. The gods had to interfere, but even then, it wasn't that easy. thirst for revenge, Achilles pushed the Trojan army back to Troy, and Apollo had to distract Achilles so that the Trojans would have time to get behind the walls. But Hector had promised he would fight Achilles, and so it happens. He asks Achilles to agree that whoever wins wouldn't mutilate the other.
Let us pledge that the winner will allow the loser all the proper funeral rituals.
There are no pacts between lions and men.
There is no pity, no mercy.
Hector throws his spear, but Achilles protects himself with his shield. Hector charges against Achilles, who strikes him with a spear. This fight is pretty much Pantheon's skills in the game. Pantheon can throw his spear or thrust it, like Achilles. Pantheon can use his shield to block any attack, just like Achilles used his shield against Hector. That skill is named Aegis Assault. Aegis was a shield used by Athena, and Athena was a protector of Achilles.
Shields defend hearts, both yours and those beside you.
Pantheon can jump and stun the enemy. Achilles was known for his speed. Pantheon's ult is Grand Starfall. Pantheon composes himself and then leaps into the air, landing at a chosen location as a comet. In Iliad, Achilles is compared to a rampaging fireball. I mean, Achilles fought against an entire army.
Heavier than my spear is the weight of only one life.
Pantheon's passive skill is Mortal Will. The main theme of Pantheon is that he finds his power in his humanity. He's mortal, he's not a god. That scar in Pantheon's chest is Aatrox's blow that killed the aspect of war inhabiting Atreus' body.
I wield my fate as a weapon.
Pantheon knows he's mortal, but that isn't a weakness. It's similar to Achilles. He chose to have a short life, but with eternal glory. Achilles knows he will die in the Trojan War, but that isn't a problem for him, because Achilles knows that what matters are his actions. Honor, for the ancient Greeks, was one of the supreme values.
The heavens do not fear me because I am a god. They fear me because I am a man.
There is one big difference between Achilles and Pantheon that I have to say. Achilles doesn't hate the gods. Pantheon wants to fight the demons and the gods. These divine entities only bring suffering to man. Man should rise up against them.
The power of these gods is but an echo of our own. We are caught between Darkin and Aspect, but we will rise up in spite of them. The blows of gods cannot shatter the world if they strike me instead.
There is a nice message to find in Pantheon's quotes. We are humans. Our bodies might be fragile, we might be weaker than the powers of nature, but deep within us, each one of us carries a flame, our willpower. That flame is what pushes us against our limits, and at least for a moment, our will can ignite the world, making even the gods shocked, like when Achilles revenges Patroclus.
I know who I am, and I will show the gods what I can become.
There are many similarities between Pantheon quotes and Stoicism. Consider these quotes.
How much further could we march if we were not forced to carry our fears on our backs? Let fear make you bold.
It's very similar to Seneca's passage. He who fears death will never do anything worth of a man who is alive. Or this other passage. They lose the day in expectation of the night, and the night in fear of the dawn.
The past marches with me. Pressing forward is not the same as running from your mistakes.
Very similar to Seneca. Life is very short and anxious for those who forget the past, neglect the present, and fear the future.
I have found my limit 1,000 times, and still I press further.
These are some potential similarities, but Pantheon doesn't fit very well in the Stoic philosophy. For the Stoics, happiness is found when we realize we only need the very basic. But Pantheon desires too much, and he's very much moved by his passions, similar to Achilles, but different from the Stoics. But anyway, some of Pantheon's quotes are quite nice.
We are what we overcome. Because we fall, the climb must be our destination.
I like these messages. Don't be afraid of suffering and the challenges of life, because overcoming these challenges is what gives meaning to our lives.
When I look to the mountain's peak, in my mind, I have already fallen, and so I climb.
Pantheon, Echo, and Kindred are my favorite champions in League of Legends. I hope you enjoyed this analysis of Pantheon. Let me know in the comments if you'd like a similar kind of analysis of other champions, or even of other games. Iliad is an amazing story, but it can be quite hard to read. My favorite adaptation is the one by Madeline Miller, titled The Song of Achilles. It's told from Patroclus' perspective. If you want a quicker summary of Iliad, then I recommend the YouTube series by Course Hero. I have added the link in the description. And if you'd like to know a bit about what Stoicism can teach us about playing League of Legends, you can check this video here. Thank you for watching, and see you next week.